Andy, we are going to unpack lessons learned through leadership mistakes. This is about a guy I know.
No, this is about things that you've been through, Sten, but it's also, again, we mention it because we live in it day to day, but we just get to talk to so many advisors on a weekly basis. I mean, we're just having dozens, and our head coach, Jared, and myself, we get to have dozens of conversations with advisors who are out there all across America having these experiences, and the universal experience of people that are completely spread out and sort of isolated, but they're just having the same experience. And one of those is that they have become the bottleneck. And we want to give really practical guidance today on this very common issue. We call it a leadership mistake, but sometimes I think it's part of just growth. It's not necessarily a mistake. It's just part of growing, is that you end up becoming the bottleneck in your business. So what are some signs that you can start to see or feel that you are becoming the bottleneck in your business? What advisors experience?
I think it's one of those things we laughed about as we were preparing for it. If you do not see a bottleneck in your business, it's probably because it's you.
Right. Yeah. We were saying it, if you don't know the sucker is at the table when you're playing cards, then you're the sucker. Right. And so, yeah, if you're not sure what could be slowing it down, if you're not really clear on that, then it's likely you. Mm-hmm. And so there's you have to either, and you were helping me understand this yesterday, you have to either accept the limitations that you have by being the bottleneck, and that's as far as you're going to grow in the business, or you have to hire people. And that can be a really scary thing for a lot of people, because the nature of this business is, you are solo. Like, there's so many times it's just you start by yourself.
And I think there's efficiencies you can find that give you some relief. Right. But your ceiling doesn't go up. Maybe if you have a new software, or you learn to deliver things faster, or you train your team better, you might grow by 25, 30%. But if you want, 10x type thinking, you have to put people in a place where all they think about is something that's important, and all you are thinking about is something important, and your list of important to-dos gets as short as possible.
Yeah. I love the numbers you shared there, because I think that early in your career, you can double your revenue, and you could double it again. But at some point, you can't keep doubling it without adding some infrastructure to this. And then you end up becoming the bottleneck. I'm curious if you could talk about why it's difficult structurally, as most advisors. We have a lot of advisors who are listening in their first, 10 years of business. They're doing pretty well, but they're reaching this sort of plateau. Why is the very nature of financial advisor business create bottlenecks?
It's an interesting business. We're not just a business owner that owns a factory that creates widgets. We are the business owner, but we are also the main distributor of the product. Yeah. Like, we are the licensed advisor while also being the business owner. And early on, we're usually the head marketer, some form of overseer of operations. And so the nature of our business from day one, it puts us in this situation of doing like 4 or 5 jobs.
Yeah. So
I want to totally normalize that. We talk a lot about the stages of advisors, and you can't really skip a stage. We help a lot of advisors get through them faster. And a lot of that is you can be all of those roles for a period of time. But very quickly, if you're having any amount of success, you realize, wow, me processing paperwork or being involved in that at all is taking away from my clients, taking away from me doing better for my current clients, and taking me away from helping more clients. And then if you were able to offload the operations side, and you realize, man, when I spend an hour having to prep for a meeting, that's not the highest and best use of my skill set. I probably need a paraplanner or a junior advisor. And you see this natural progression, and we teach on this. Who are the hires you need to make? Because I believe the goal is you don't have to have a company of 20 people, but 4 to 6, that can be, you can have a $3 million plus revenue practice a year, but you're not going to do that with 1 or 2 or 3 people unless your goal is to do the long game. And I still meet some of these advisors that they have healthy practices to some degree, but it took them 40 years to do it. The market grew, so their revenue grew. They've slowly got some referrals. What always happens in that case is they get to when they're in their 50s, 60s, and their book starts dying because everybody's taking all their money out because all their clients are retired, passing away. The kids get the money and the kids leave. Yeah. And so there's this cycle that we can't ignore. And if your sole goal of being in this business is to help some people and just make enough income for yourself to be comfortable, maybe that path's okay. a lot of the advisors we talk to have something inside of them that says, no, I actually want to be a business owner.
Yeah.
I don't want to create a really hard job for myself.
I would submit that most advisors have not experienced what it really means to be a business owner. I mean, in the sense that you are managing a business instead of you are the product, you are the marketer, you're the salesperson, you're the administrator.
I think they get a taste of come and go as you please.
Yeah,
Meaning no one's really telling you, but a lot of salespeople have that too.
Yeah.
A lot of people where they just have to go on the road and they sell, and they're held accountable more to a quota than like hours worked.
Yeah.
So I would argue that's not even really the best taste of it. The whole goal, and I'm even still working on this, revamping the team, getting the right people in, is that I can step away. My sole goal on the team is to be an advisor to the clients I want to work with. I serve in like an advisory capacity on the business owner level, and that when I'm gone, sometimes the business thrives without me.
Yeah,
like that should be the goal of all of us. Easier said than done. There's a path. You think you're getting close, and then somebody leaves or quits, or you got to let somebody go. Like the challenges will persist, but you will see this growth in yourself if you keep pushing. And someday, where you say, "Wow, I get to come to the office and celebrate everybody, but this business is not relying on me."
Right. So how do you hire to break the bottleneck? If we really believe that the bottleneck is relieving, again, think about bottleneck because there's a pressure point, that I think about traffic, right? We all know that traffic is, hey, this road worked fine, but why is it not working right now? There's too much, right? There's the capacity is not there. So you need to break the bottleneck. So there are some things that you can do to hire, but I think, again, please remember that you need to start by knowing who you are as an advisor and knowing what your greatest gifts are. And so we call those superpowers. Is you should start by saying, what are my superpowers? And then I'm going to hire around those, right?
Yeah, superpower is also what you enjoy doing. You may say there's some things that with my current team makeup, I'm the best at it, but I promise you there's somebody out there better. So there's the exercise of just going through and saying, what are the things I have to do and what are the things that I enjoy doing? And you can pretty quickly build a list of things that you need to delegate to somebody else. And we have job descriptions we share with our advisors, we coach, like that. This isn't new. So as you listen, if you're scared of this, you've tried it and it hasn't worked. It's not because it won't. It just means that you need to, get better at your hiring process or get some input on where you go find these people. It will require people. If you want to reach your full potential as a business owner, like you need to have a team. And so I think you need to identify the things you shouldn't be doing. And it's very obvious in our business that that's a lot of times processing. So most advisors listening may say, I either know I need an admin person or I already have one. Great. But then you need a junior advisor or some other type of advisor that can help with the licensed advice-based stuff. Because if you are a team with one advisor, that's the definition of a bottleneck. Because you are the only one that can deliver the product.
Yeah.
Unless you get into more of like a sales, like we sell insurance or annuities and we're not advice based. It's just, you can maybe scale that more. But most of the advisors we coach and hang out with want like an advice based business, which requires advisor time. And therefore, if that's you and a couple junior advisors that you bring up, if you partner with another advisor to alleviate and create capacity for, going up market or getting more ideal clients, there usually needs to be more than one person that can deliver advice.
So let's get practical in regards to, let's say you're hiring, you're moving in a healthy way, and you feel like, man, I have good people. I still am finding myself in the way. We're not growing. There's some really practical advice on how do you stay out of the way, and it's the 10-80-10. I've heard this for probably a decade. This principle. I will say that this is hard for people to make this transition. And I don't know what numbers you could put to it, but the principle, if you could explain the principle, and then I'll kind of explain how people try to do this, but then fail. So what does 10-80-10 mean from a bottleneck perspective?
So the hope being is that as a leader, you can be involved in the first 10% of something. You can delegate or pass off the next 80% of the project, and then you can come in for the last 10% and quality control, kind of put some finishing touches on it. I'll say before you jump in that something I learned is don't do this with something really, really important to start. It is okay if somebody has not earned your trust yet. That doesn't mean they're not good. Doesn't mean maybe you have trust issues. Maybe they just haven't had enough reps to prove it to you.
Yeah.
But start delegating some things with some parameters. Shield your clients from, you don't want to test and, learn trial and error on people with their money. But the idea of I'm here to help. but I'm going to give you responsibility because as a professional adult, you're going to rise to that occasion. And then I'm going to come back in and kind of do the last minute.
Yeah. I think a very simple explanation. I think about my kids, and my youngest daughter now is the one who's sort of taken over the lawn mowing in the neighborhood. My older ones can do other work and different work now. So the youngest is now Lucy. She's the lawn mowing expert in the neighborhood.
She inherited the empire.
She did. She inherited the 3 lawn empire. But anyway, but for her, it's $400 or $500 a month, and it's a lot for a 12-year-old. And one of the things that we make sure we do with the customer is we say, because they're the boss, right? We say, what do you want? And so that 10% of the job is tell us what you want, set the vision, right? And then Lucy does 80% of the work. The customer comes back outside and does the last 10% sort of visually says, hey, I want you to make sure you do this, this, and this, and this. And so the customer, now they do that one time, but on a project to project basis, it should be the case where you can come in and say, hey, here's a big vision. Here's what I want. Go get them. And then at the very end, you can come in and say, great job on that 80%. Let's make these small changes and then let's move forward. Mm-hmm. Right now.
And in practice, it could end up being 10, 55. The feedback loop needs to continue if there's a stuck point.
Yeah.
So it's more complicated than it, but the core idea is you do not stay involved. And we see this with advisors all the time that they get filled up with having to be the decision maker constantly, but they're actually doing harm, disempowering their people. You need to, at some point, let people go, make some mistakes in a protected environment to learn and grow.
Well, I would submit that the best version of this is 10-80-10. That's really what you want to do. Mm-hmm. Okay. So any other version of that is the goal is to get to 10-80-10, because it can discourage your people if you say, we're going to do 10-80-10 and you do 10, 20, 5, 10, like you keep coming in and out, in and out, in and out. Mm-hmm. So part of this is just making it clear with your people, hey, here's how far I want you to go and then come back to me. Here's how far I want you to go and then come back to me. Because the other thing is, this is a great point. I love you. Like, don't let the first thing you do go, hey, decide where we're going to move our office. And I'll check with you in 6 months and I'll write a check. Like that's way too big. Mm-hmm. So for a while, yes, it has to be, you give them a 10% vision. They do 30% of the work. You come in and give them 5%. But ultimately, what you really do want is you want to be able to say, here's a vision. Then they run within it. At the very end, you go, okay, here's a few tweaks. We're done. Like that's the ideal. And so if that's not your experience, then that's what you want to work towards. And if that's not what you're going to do, don't say you're going to do that and then come back in and say, hey, I want you to do a little bit and then check with me every Friday. Just give me a status report. Yep. I think that's totally acceptable.
Yep.
So there's 2 outcomes you can have, which is that you can have.
Real quick on one point. Something I've had to recognize within my business in the past is that I like debate. Like my personality is I'll throw something out and I'm more than happy for somebody to push back. Like usually the outcome is better if there's some kind of friction in debate.
And you enjoy it.
And there's something in me that kind of gets fueled by it. I know a lot of people hate that feeling of confrontation. Yeah. I don't take it personal and I can kind of walk away. And I think there's a way of learning to do that well. A lot of times people, depending on your leadership style, and this was true of me in years past, is that people just take whatever you say. So if I throw something out in the universe, people grab onto it and run. Yeah. And there's times where people grabbed onto something, ran with it. And I was like, we didn't even say that was supposed to happen, but it gave them like purpose for the next week or the next month. So I think clear expectations are important, where I've had to coach my team now on, hey, just so you know, I like ideas and I say things pretty confidently. But that doesn't mean I've thought it out fully.
Dude, that's great. Do not
mistake my
confidence. Don't equate the level of confidence in which I say something with the validity of the idea. Sure. We should absolutely do this. Does not mean it's valid.
Yeah. So April on my team has coached me to say, hey, Sten, we're going to do some of those conversations in private because she can help me kind of grab the ideas. It's the visionary integrator dynamic. But what I want is I want team members, and this has happened, where like, I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
You're allowed to disagree with me. We're going to sit in that for a while. And what I'll coach them on is you actually need to bring me information and facts on why, not just because you feel it.
Yeah.
Because if you say, I feel this will be better, but yet you don't have a track record of accomplishing it.
Or stats. Yeah. Or stats.
Then you're just saying, take a bet on me. And it's like, especially if it's an investment financially or a lot of time, it's like, bring a business proposal to the table. Like come to me with a well thought out plan. But my hope is for all of our teams is that we do have some hard conversations, difficult conversations, some friction happening. Because if you don't, and everybody just does what you say,
Yeah.
Randomly, that's not healthy.
Yeah. And I appreciate you being self-aware enough to know that. And I think you have to remind people, yes, I'm in charge, but it doesn't mean that every idea I have is the likelihood that every idea that you as the advisor has is better than the second or third or fourth version or idea is just zero. Like you're not always going to have the best idea. And what you do really want is you want people to vet and work out those ideas before you spend a bunch of time on them.
Yep.
So you can have a great team. They can stay involved in the decisions. Ultimately, it is, up to you and when you make a decision. But ultimately, what you also want is you want to be able to get out of the way. This is about a bottleneck. You want to get out of the way so you can have better flows, so you can have better outcomes. And just understand that the nature of this business, as we talked about, creates bottlenecks, and then you have to work them out. So if you're experiencing a bottleneck, that's just part of the business, but you want to get through that as quick as you can. And again, I'll say this to wrap up. I think one of the best ways is to have someone else look at your business and go, "This is a bottleneck. Do you see that?" Because sometimes it's just hard to see it when you're in it.
Yeah, and I think one thing that this happens in all areas of our life is that we get to a point where we say, "No, we're good, we're content," and a lot of times that's not really true. Like you're putting up with something you don't have to, and you're spending most of your energy learning to adapt to that norm versus challenging it for the thing could be better. And we coach advisors all the time that are like, "Hey, I think I'm good. Like I don't need coaching." And it's like my question's always like, "No, prove to me where you're going to get coaching." Because if what you're telling me is that you're sad, like you're done and you don't need coaching anymore or outside input, like you're doing harm to yourself. And so if any part of you right now has this feeling of like, "I'm great, I'm doing good things," huge blind spot. Is it, we should always at least be aware. That doesn't mean it's never good enough. We should always be changing everything around us, but we should look for and pursue like complete awareness of, man, I am the bottleneck right now. It's summertime. My kids are off school, so I don't have capacity now to take on that challenge, but I'm at least going to accept I'm working too hard. I'm not making the income I can. I'm not working with ideal clients. I want to be home more. Like if we can just recognize all those things, that's at least a good starting point to like, okay, what change needs to come next?
I love that. I love the reminder for everyone who's listening. The healthiest thing you can do is sometimes recognize your discontent. Like be aware enough to say, wait a minute, I am not in the ideal situation. I'm actually just accepting a less than ideal situation. That feels crappy in the moment, but that's the great place to start because then you'll do something to change it. So thank you, Sten. I appreciate it.
You bet.